I gotta say, this is pretty swanky. I've never been in this hall before. It must be one of the most beautiful halls I've seen in my career, and I'm nervous. I'll say it out loud. Maybe that helps me cope with the situation. Tommo touched upon a few really important topics. Helsinki becoming a bit of a hub, or the hub, especially for mobile gaming. And I think what you said about the village metaphor is really important. It takes a village to raise a child, and I guess it takes a village also to create a really successful mobile game. And somehow we've managed to create in Helsinki an environment where that really holds true. The other bit is that Helsinki has really grown up. When I entered the mobile games industry 2004-03, I don't think that I would have been allowed up on this stage to talk about mobile games back then. But things have changed, and we've become a force to be reckoned with, and an international hub to be reckoned with. So with that, how many individuals in the room are not of Finnish origin? Hands up, please. Would you look at that? That's really, that warms my heart a lot. And thank you then for Helsinki to really becoming the city that we want it to become. And thanks for everybody. Thanks to everybody for joining today and giving me this nervosity. So I'll go now to the talk. Neatly titled, ironic that I come from a marketing background, but neatly titled Reflections on Strategy and Leadership in a Creative World. My name is Wilhelm, and as I said, I've been in the industry for some time. And I think part of what makes me also nervous today is the fact that I'm standing here kicking off what is a first of a kind of a very important show. The IGDA was founded back in '94, and it carries the mission to support and empower game developers around the world in achieving fulfilling and sustainable careers. So today is now the first time the IGDA gathers in the form of a leadership summit in Europe, the first time in 25 years. And here I stand as the opening keynote speaker. Now, I'm supposed to kick things off talking about leadership and strategy. No pressure, right? But the irony of this is these are the types of situations that we should always be able to handle as leaders. Leaders are put under tremendous pressure. And that's something that comes with the job. So it becomes a little bit of a meta layer for me all over this situation, the fact that everything collides here at one. Now, leadership is also, when we go into this, it is a personal topic. There's millions of business books and management books and leadership books that have been written that touch upon the subject, but at the end of the day, it is a personal topic, and that means that some of the things that I say here today are not necessarily reflected in books, but these are my thoughts, and hopefully I can help in sharing some of that and maybe inspire thoughts and conversations as a result of the talk. As a result of it being a personal topic, I'm also going to do probably the longest intro bit that I've ever done in any presentation to date. This is also a pilot then of mine, because I'm not really a big fan of introducing a speaker in a long way myself. I think that's a bit of a waste of time. They gave me an hour, so I have the time now. I'm going to go back to round about 1993. This is me. Back in 1993, and I was aspiring. I think I was aspiring to program. I wasn't very good. I did a few things in BASIC, and when it got into Pascal, I realized that my brain it's just not enough. I'm not going to be able to do this. I was very much a gamer, and I think I'm very much a gamer at heart. I do play a lot of games still, but as Tom also put it nicely, I think all of us would like, I think there's a shared wisdom, we would like to play more games. I did, that's me. So, like, you know, you're a teenager and you develop and you get into all kinds of things, and you might want to become the cool kid on the block, and that certainly does apply to me as well. So, fast forward 1998, that's me in the middle, and I had polished up on my graffiti writing skills over those few years. And what I did, I think, learn at that time is that that's not going to necessarily turn into a sustainable career over time. So I had to do something about that, and not knowing what to do, I got into business school, because that's usually what you do when you don't really know what to do. But at the same time, I also started DJing and producing music, and this is me at some countryside, weird all-night rave, playing my tunes. And that's not going to turn into a sustainable career either. It could, but there's very few that actually happens to. 2005, I got my degree in economics, and I think that kind of then got me weirdly into marketing of mobile games, and how that really happened. I sometimes say that I had a vision of mobile games becoming very large, but truth is, I think that there was way more random factors at play that eventually led to that happening. And fast forward, here we are today. So who is that guy? I have been at Rovio for a few years, and I did head up the games business, but my time in mobile games started back in 2004 with Mr. Good Living. And then I spent time in the games industry up until 2010, 11, and then I spent some time outside of the games industry, realized that it's way more boring outside the games industry than it is inside of the games industry. So I got back in, and I'm not going to leave again. No way. This is the best product on the planet, but above all, I think it's the best people of any industry on the planet, and that's really what keeps us engaged in the industry. These are some of the games that I've worked on. There's a lot more, and albeit not all of these were successful, I think that these do represent the more successful. There's a lot more unsuccessful games in my past. And in my defense, I was young, I was stupid. What can I say? Then stuff that I believe in, you put in words in a word cloud machine, and for whatever reason it picks one word to become the biggest one, and it picked results. But it is also true, right? We do, especially in leadership, we do want to see results happen. And that might not always be in the form of revenues and profit, but we want to see results. We want to see people elevate and grow over time. But people is there, culture is there, getting shit done. Fairness, vision, strategy, winning, team, fun, all really important things that I really, really believe that are incredibly important when it comes to leadership. And lastly, as if it wasn't apparent yet, I'm going to put pink glasses on myself as a reminder that we're working in a fun industry, and we should try to have fun and not always take ourselves too seriously when we're working in this industry. Right. Onwards to the next slide of the intro. Okay, that's my time as head of games at Rovio. Now, controversially, I'm asking, how did I do this? Any guesses? Any guesses? Exactly, not alone. And the truth is, I didn't do that. There's a wonderful, good, amazing group of people that did that. I was there, I certainly was helping in many areas, but I think above all, what I did was I tried to foster an environment where people could succeed. And I did really try to create a reason for us to believe and a reason also for us to act. But they did, these guys did all the heavy lifting when it came to the amazing results that we achieved during that time. With those formalities out of our way, let's get down to business. First up, I'll lay the groundwork and explain a bit of what makes our industry perhaps a bit different. My views are very obviously tainted from my time in mobile games, but I think that a lot of what I say is applicable to practically all game development. Secondly, I'll go through some thoughts about strategy and culture and strategy, and how those two topics play together. And thirdly, there's a lot of jargon and mottos when it comes to leadership, and there's an endless amount of those things. I can't cover all of them. I'll cover two, which I think are important in kind of wrapping up also what I'm saying here today. And then we wrap up, and hopefully I'm less stressed at that point, and we all walk happy out and have a good conversation and a cup of coffee afterwards. Is that okay? It's okay? Cool, yeah. So creative industries, what's so different? We all work in a creative industry. It's extremely fast-paced, it's fast-growing, it's a very intensive industry. I think it's worth pausing and thinking about what actually makes it different. And I'm going to start by showing a very binary example of how to view things. On the left side, we have a factory task. On the right side, we have a painting. I think it's worth considering the immense difference in product and process that these two extreme examples show. One is, on the left side, a purely manual task, which is at the point of creation, it's completely planned and it's completely unambiguous. It's planned to perfection, and there is likely quite a lot of thinking that is involved in getting to that plan to perfection. But there's very little improvisation at the point of creation. The other, on the right side, is a product of love. It's a product of almost definitely extreme, but almost divine talent. It's also likely very well planned in advance also, but there's very little room, there's a lot of importance, because as we know, without a very well-working team that works together, there will be no art, there will be nothing to enjoy. No individual contributor can outperform the work of a great team. So back to the example. In it, we have three, what I think are 60-plus females painting graffiti together. These ladies are supposed to paint an excellent graffiti piece that is supposed to likely appeal to a demographic that is completely not them. That is, if they aim to become the queen graffiti writers of the town. They have to appeal to others. Now, that's also the case often for us as game makers. We're not necessarily always creating this wonderful work of art for ourselves, but trying to create something for someone else. So in our work, we have the artist, we have the game designer, and we have the programmer, who are all trying to create then something together for someone else. And then we have this gigantic other group of people, especially when it comes to creating games as services, as we very often nowadays talk about. All of these individuals together, they need to work in tandem to ensure that the end result becomes great. And it's not only that. That's not enough to explain the whole challenge. It's more than that. And whether we like it or not, companies are usually there to make some money. And leadership does have a fair bit to do with that as well. In many of our businesses, in free-to-play mobile games, it becomes more complicated since players can enjoy our work of art for free. So the business then becomes created by the craft, the art itself. The better the painting, the more likely and the more people might spend money on your craft. So, now I'm going to do the criminal act of drawing a Venn diagram. And this is not even one, this is one of two in the presentation, so bear with me, I'm sorry. With free-to-play, the art fundamentally changed. The art all of a sudden had business embedded into it. The art became the business. And inside there, in the middle, that's where we have great free-to-play games, in my opinion. What does this mean? Well, fundamentally, this is an industry all about the art. But great teams today now design for the long term. They're guided by intuition, but informed by data. This becomes complicated. And this is why all of us, I think, oftentimes have a hard time explaining really what we do to outsiders. It's a complicated thing that we do, and people that don't really know the games industry, they will have a challenge understanding what we do in our day-to-day. That's also why our industry is so fascinating. We take a bunch of people that have come from a completely different background, and we work together in creating something that will hopefully inspire and engage players for a very long time. I think we're blessed as individuals in working in games. As I said, it's not only the best product on the planet, it's also the best people on the planet. There's one more thing to explain also the challenges we work in our industry. That's the fact that we don't live in isolation. This is a big business, and there's a lot of companies that want a piece of that business. There's a lot of competition. The latest really kind of official figures say that there's a new iOS game coming out every second minute. And that really also affects our job in this industry. Leads me to say that I believe that this is the fastest, it is definitely the fastest growing, but I also think that this is the most sophisticated entertainment industry on this planet. And I'm really happy that mobile games was born in Finland. Thank you, Snake. Right, that's that for the intro. Let's go into thinking about what that means for us as leaders. I'll dive right into the role of strategy. Now there's a lot, as you know, there's a lot of different ways of tackling this topic. I'll offer one way. And as in any good talk, I'm going to go to the origin of the word itself. I'm going to go to ancient Greece. The word strategy originates from the Old Greek word strategia. That comes from army plus leading, and through a bit of etymology hoops, the translation to current language would roughly turn the meaning into the troop leader's art. Okay then. Instead of dwelling on that topic, I'm just going to throw a number on the screen. 85%. Any idea what that number is? Chris can't answer. Anybody else? Okay. It's an appalling number. It's a shocking number, to be honest. It's this. 85% of the North American workforce, on average, they're either disengaged or actively disengaged. Holy crap. That means that almost 90% of US workers, on average, are sleepwalking through their days. That's a problem. And I'm not sure that the statistic is that in games. I would believe that it's far lower, but it's still something that we as leaders need to be aware of. How engaged really are the people? That also thing, honestly, if 85% of that guy's troops are disengaged, then the art sucks, right? Unfortunately, I believe strategy itself can often play into this. I think at worst, it can feed into this terrible statistic. Let me try to explain that. Anybody played this game? I know I have. Put a ton of business word jargon in a bingo format and try to catch them all when somebody explains the new strategy. Make no mistake, I think strategy can be extremely poorly put together, poorly communicated, and poorly enacted. I believe that it can be a huge source of dissatisfaction in an organization. Or it can be the exact opposite. So then I go back to the question, what is strategy then? Because I don't think that the art of the troop leader is enough to explain. I think we need a little bit more. I believe that strategy should be a reason for people to believe. I think that applies both to external and internal people of an organization. Believe in what then? I think it should be a reason for people to believe in our company, in our products, and in our future. This definition has certain implications then how you approach the topic of strategy. And I think in here, the interplay between leadership and strategy becomes very, very important if this is something that we take to heart. So I believe that there's a bit of magic that can happen when things then are done in the right way. And here comes the second Venn diagram. Again, apologies. In isolation, what do you get when you focus only on action? Oftentimes not very good results. Then again, in isolation, if you focus on intelligence alone, you usually don't get that far. Maybe in certain lines of research, but usually you don't get that far. It's in the interplay, when you have things in good balance, magical things start to happen. And this leads to the point. Strategy becomes something we do. It's not something we talk about. It is something that we enact. And this, I think, is really important. The art of the true leader is something that is done. Yes, it takes into account a lot of things, but at the end of the day, it's something that's done. And what is done in a company, especially in such an exciting industry as ours, is games. And our games, for us, what type of games, who they're for, etc. Those need to be a reason for us to believe. For if they're not, something is really wrong, fundamentally wrong. As we also know, it's by thoughts that we humans inspire action. And by affecting thoughts, by affecting people's thinking, we can inspire action. However, oftentimes in leadership, in dare I say, especially in other industries, but likely also in many companies in our industry, we go by it the wrong way. We want to see strategic change more quickly. So we resort to things like governance, things like structure, things like process. We gather, we put questions on the table, and then we answer those questions, and then we execute those answers through a series of town hall meetings, strategy workshops, etc., where the big picture is force-fed. And the thing with these elements is that they're so tangible. They're so easy to resort to. It's really easy to see reporting lines change. It's really easy to work on a new production process or a new project management process. But there's two big issues with that. It undermines engagement of the organization. And the second thing is that if we invite conversation as leaders, we're already halfway there. the way of then moving forward from that point becomes so much easier. So for us, I think we should really underline the need for engagement and two-way interaction in leadership and in strategic conversation. Human nature itself dictates that if you want to influence somebody, if you want to have somebody affected by your thoughts and your actions and your words, a good way to start is to show that they can influence you. If you're open to others, others tend to be open to you. Influence itself comes through interaction. And also when people interact, they put skin in the game. So the second thing is that if we approach strategy and strategy as part of leadership in this way, when the process becomes two-way, we have buy-off across an organization already before the communication part. People that have been a part of creating the blueprint will most likely believe in the blueprint when it's communicated. And then all the communication and enacting and everything can be done by anybody in the company practically. You don't have to resort to the CXO or whatever VP person or whatever other leader, but it's really by the organization for the organization. It makes it all more believable when you do it that way. Then I guess the main takeaway then from this is this, and I'm not going to go into processes for defining this and how a strategy process becomes reality. This is something that I've done over the past year at quite a few different companies. But this is something that I believe in. Two-way interaction leads to strategically aligned action, hopefully leading to belief, and at the end of the day, some form of results. But I'd rather talk about culture now and how that plays into the picture. A beautiful desert island, a lush, beautiful, exotic island. Now, consider this example. That's an isolated space. It's nice, it's beautiful. Now we bring in a person to that place. The situation just changed. A set of rules and parameters just appeared on the island. Some of those very deeply rooted in our society. Don't kill other people. Now we just introduced that cultural rule to the island. Be kind to strangers. That also entered the rule. I hope that entered the island, and I hope that entered the island. Now we bring in another person to the island. Things just changed again. And then we bring a third one. Now there's a completely new set of cultural rules. And guess what's interesting here? Now there's 3 people and only 2 sunbeds. Which means that we might have just entered in a set of competition parameters to that, assuming that all 3 want to have a piece of a sunbed. So when you bring in people together in a particular circumstance, a set of parameters emerge. They emerge automatically. And together, those parameters create the culture of the group. And you don't need to design this. They appear automatically. They emerge. They do depend on the individual's background. There's a lot of interplay there. And naturally, there's circumstances that play into this. But the point is, they appear automatically. It's the same thing with companies. If you don't have some form of thought about this, you will have a company culture even though it was never intended to be in a certain way. So we take now this beautiful office building instead. It's empty. There's nobody there. Now we put GameCo inside of the office building. And a certain set of cultural organizational parameters probably now appeared in the house. It is advisable to think about these parameters. And there are examples where this thinking has produced amazing results and very, very unique cultural systems. I know that these are extreme examples of thinking about this, but I think these show that how far a company's cultural design can be taken. Now, when it comes to leadership, what this actually also tells us is that we have to keep in mind that our own behavior as leaders will directly reflect into the company's culture. That's both in good and bad. So, on that island, if there would have appeared a democratically elected leader amongst a group of three, that would have changed things. If there would have been a coup and some self-elected militant would have taken the charge, that would have also reflected on the island's culture. Our style as leaders affect the company's culture. The culture itself, it does stare back at the leader, but it's not a one-to-one picture. It's distorted. It changes along the way. So with that, let's get a little bit of science behind what I'm talking about. Edgar Schein, back in 1980, published a book called Organizational Culture and Leadership. It is a great piece of literature where he goes through a set of three dimensions in culture. Artifacts, the most tangible, most easy to look at and witness, but oftentimes incredibly hard to understand, really the true meaning of artifacts. Second, the values of the group, some more fundamental. As I said, don't kill your team members. Those are very fundamental to human interaction, rules that guide human interaction. Some way less so. And here, even though you would not design any of these, when you have people working together, forming a group, they emerge. These parameters emerge automatically. Number three, this is way more than fundamental, rooted in the psychology of the group. This is what connects all of it together, artifacts to values. And this is also oftentimes truly understanding number one and number two becomes troubling. If we take another extreme examples, as we know, both ancient Egyptians and Mayans, they both created pyramids, pyramid-like structures. But the values and assumptions behind those pyramids were completely different to each other. And it's the same thing to try to understand a company's culture on face value, so really the artifact level. You won't get very far. It's much more rooted in the people. And it is through the interplay of these that you have the norms, that you have rituals and other manifestations of the culture of an organization. And when it comes to leadership and to strategic change, there's a very important lesson. Organizational learning, development, and planned change cannot be understood without considering culture as the primary source of resistance to change. Culture is often the fabric of resistance for strategic change. Leaders want to change the course of action, but if they don't understand and if they don't try to affect the fabric of the society that they've built, and their new strategy is not aligned with that society, they will fail. To address and explain, I'll illustrate that with two examples. One where things align, and one where they don't. Elon Musk, we've all read about him. He is a controversial guy. There's no denying that. But I think we can all agree that he does embody a fair bit of innovation. He's really, really trying to change things. SpaceX, commercial space travel company with a final kind of mission to save humanity. In here, these things align. So the distorted cultural image of him, probably good and bad, reflects back from what the company is trying to do. And then when they don't, I can't believe that I have two images of him in the same damn presentation. Sorry. So let's say you have a desired culture, a desired strategy that is fundamentally based on agile, lean, and empowered individuals. If you put this guy to lead the group, that empowerment will not happen. So that will never work. It's a system that will fail. And that then shows this type of visualization of the types of challenges we might face as leaders. When things align, strategy, values, culture, and the people that form it all. All of this is in perfect alignment, all neat, looks nice and tidy. This is very efficient. This is a great place to work, by the way. It might look boring, but it's not. That's a very, very, very good system there. But oftentimes, the reality might look a little bit more like this, right? That's not a great place to be. This is where you get sayings like, oh, that company is completely messed up. That's what it looks like when you put it on paper. And we'll likely, as leaders, at one point or another, go through situations like this. The bit with culture is that it can be tremendously hard to understand and measure, especially if you haven't been involved with the situation for long. So it can be challenging to try to change, but it doesn't mean that it's not worth to do so. There's a bit more, a little bit. The framework from Master Edgar on culture is really good and useful. But let's look at a little bit newer prose also to talk about how culture stays in an organization, and in order to understand why some of the things we try to do and why change can bump into it. So this is a newer article from last year. Can't remember who wrote it, but if somebody wants to have it, I'm happy to share. They identified 4 attributes of culture. Number 1, it's shared. Number 2, it's pervasive. Number 3, it's enduring. And 4, implicit. Without going into detail about what these all mean, I think it shows why it is challenging to measure, contain, develop, and really plan it. It doesn't usually happen, especially when trying to change it. So if we want to build a company that is where success is deeply rooted in its culture, it's worth thinking about that on day 0 rather than day 1,500. However, when properly aligned with values, drives, and needs, it can unleash tremendous amount of energy towards a shared purpose and really foster an organization's capacity to thrive. And this, ladies and gentlemen, this is why culture eats strategy for breakfast. At the end of the day, no employee will remain loyal to your strategy. They remain loyal to the culture. They remain loyal to the people, who are the very embodiment of the culture. Clyde, Blinky, Pinky, Inky, Schminky, they don't endure. They are colorful, and they hopefully guide our actions in the short term. They lead us to believe in the short term. They lead us to act in the short term. But the artifacts, the people, their behaviors, this is what keeps us excited in the long term. So, a few mottos. And I think these align well with what I tried to paint so far. As I said, there's a lot of leadership strategy jargon, stuff that is thrown around without necessarily really giving it a big thought. I'll try to decode 2, both which are, I think, relevant for what we do. We've all heard this, right? Leading from the front. I think most of us have heard that it's important to lead from the front. That's quite easy to misunderstand and think about that it looks like this. Now, I don't think this guy's art of the troop leader is necessarily very fitting for our industry. No, that's not it. That's not how you do it. So there's a difference in here in having a perception of leading from the front versus actually being in the front. In such a knowledge-intensive industry as ours, competence-intensive industry, I think the perception of leading from the front is way, way, way more important. There's simply no way that you as a leader will be able to know everything about the craft, about the art, engineering, data, marketing, etc., etc., etc. But you will have to be able to stand tall on behalf of the team. So what that then means is that sometimes you surely should really be in the front. But perhaps more often, you stay in the back and you let great individuals lead the charge to wherever you're going. And sometimes you might be jumping there in the middle, being in the front, hopping in the back, really depending on the situation. Always being inspiring and always putting your people first. So this strange hopping back and forth balance act is something that leaders should really take to heart and be able to do seamlessly if they are to thrive and succeed. The second is about strategy processes, and I'm sure that many of us in the room have been part of one, and some of us have probably led a strategy process or another. And oftentimes, strategy processes are started like this. It's that time of the year. We need some slides for the board. That's a no. The board should be interested, and they might even be the individuals that at the end of the day sign off and put an approval stamp on whatever material and thoughts that you put together. But your strategy is meant to inspire people. It's there to generate motion, and of course, hopefully it is a winning formula in an ever-changing world that is gigantically uncertain. And there's way more models that we can't go through today. So let's try to wrap up at this point. A few parting words, which I think that the remainder of today's wonderful speakers are going to open up a little bit more. Number one, be yourself because you can't be someone else. And you will also, if you try to be someone else, you will surely break yourself. You will not survive if you try to be someone else. Show that you care, show that you're vulnerable, show that you're open, and trust your team. And when things fall apart, then sometimes as a leader you might have to do difficult things. But the general rule of leadership, I feel, is like that. Try to remove the ego of the organization. If you can do that, if you can try to operate also without a big ego yourself, you allow for learnings and failure. Those are kind of flip sides of the same topic. And lastly, engage your people. Invite them to talk about the most important and the most difficult and the most dangerous topics of the organization. This set of info will allow you to receive really the big picture and will allow everybody to be a part of creating the bigger picture. It feels that everybody has really a stake in the game when they're invited. And with that, maybe one day, other industries start learning from us. That's it for this time. Thank you.
I'll just ignore that for a moment, but okay, so I think, clearly I can see you thinking about all these, leadership through context and how to develop cultures while you were tagging up those walls as a teenager or doing your first mixes on how to do true embedded culture change right there, so very contemporary. I love how those were confidential, by the way, on the looking at some of the questions that have popped in, by the way, you can write them still up right now by using that link. I like the first one here. As most companies have a hard time changing culture after day 1000, any magic bullets to suggest?
So the irony here is that if there's a need to change the culture for something, I think that oftentimes, probably 9 times out of 10, the people feel that there are things that really should change. And oftentimes I think then that the challenge doesn't necessarily even lie with the individuals. It might not lie with leadership. And then it might also lie in the structure of a company. So I think many of these changes then become something that when you can discuss it over time and really together as an organization try to affect those things over time, it can be done. Then again, if you have, let's say, a company that is pivoting from a gigantic waterfall methods for creating AAA console titles to cells of 10 to 12 people working in a very agile, fast pace to create mobile games. That will be a big challenge, and it requires a lot of dedicated effort on strategy. And then the last bit is that if there's elements of toxicity, if there's elements of really poisonous things in the culture, those are often rooted in individuals. And there might even, when the individuals are gone, there might be a reflection of that over time. So don't also then be afraid of saying no to things and stopping those things, even though the company might think otherwise.
Well, that sort of reflects on another question here, which is basically to say that if the culture it's the people, it's the leadership, it's everyone together going for a goal. Now, let's say that doesn't work, which would probably be the case if you're trying to change your culture. But let's say you've got those individuals that somehow don't fit into the culture. What do you do when there's that disconnect? Do you change A, the leader, or B, the people? if there's a mismatch between the leadership and
I think if truly the intention of a system is positive, and the intention of a system is to proceed to something, you have a blocker in the way that is in the form of a particular behavior of certain individuals or whatnot. I think that is the duty of leaders to change, and it might sometimes then lead to those difficult decisions of letting a person go. And I think that's important. It's important for the whole society in that case to take that decision and then move forward together.
In real life, have you ever seen a leader eject themselves in that situation, or do they usually result in ejecting others?
I think any of the examples and cases that we can cook up and think about have happened in companies in a way or another. Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, here's another. We've been now talking about big companies and sort of this bigger wheel happening. How does this apply to, let's say, a company of 4 people?
I think all of it does. Yeah, I think all of it does. And I think in some cases, and in most cases, a lot of this can also be translated to an individual level. Thinking about these things on an individual self-leadership point of view is even applicable. But you take the extreme cultural systems that Supercell involve, and many other companies have also deployed from day 0. Yes, the rhetoric might have changed over time somewhat, but still those systems were designed from the very get-go. No company starts with hundreds of people, usually. Now, there's also examples of that. But traditionally, games companies start with individuals, women and men in a room trying to create something together. And if we are to bank on the power, such a powerful topic of culture, those conversations do need to happen early. If that's going to be a strategy jargon alert, unfair advantage.
Nice.
Yes.
Point. Okay. Well, I think that's a really good start for the day. So we went from the abstract concept of just leadership into actually us as people and sort of crowds and our mission statements. I think we're going to continue on something similar in the next session. But once more, thank you, Wilhelm. Thank you.